So, I'm David Kahane, this is Bettina von Lieres, and we authored an article together on the Romanow Commission, a royal commission in Canada on the subject of healthcare. So Canada is different than many other jurisdictions in that citizen participation tends to be not only sponsored by, but very grandly funded by the Canadian state. And so the Romanow Commission was a multi-million-dollar exercise in consulting both experts and citizens on socialized healthcare delivery in Canada.
We were specifically interested in understanding the way in which Aboriginal communities were drawn into the consultations around the Romanow Commission. And our findings showed that, at least initially in the early stages of the consultation, Aboriginal communities were involved in ways that weren't very effective.
So this is a context where it seemed to us that the ideologies or principles of citizen participation that were being employed by this government-run inquiry were actually internally quite contradictory. So on the one hand, Canadian citizens in general were engaged in a way that really treated them as unaffiliated individuals, just citizens who would speak for themselves, for their own values, for their own interests, and provide information to the Commission that could be used in making its report. On the other hand, it was plain that Aboriginal people were really not finding a voice within those processes. These were randomly selected groups. Often there would be no Aboriginal people, or there would be very few Aboriginal people who didn't speak or were not heard. And so they did create this parallel process that was more like a set of town hall meetings and testimonials for Aboriginal people speaking as Aboriginal people.
And our findings show that one of the big problems was that the Commission, in its effort to consult and incorporate Aboriginal views, did not really take into account the specific cultural ways in which communication happens in Aboriginal communities. And a small anecdote, but I interviewed one of the members of an Inuit organization, a national Inuit organization, who told me that one of the first methods that the Commission used to consult with Inuit organizations and people in the north was internet-led surveys. And of course, what was not taken into account was that in many Inuit communities in the north, that they do not have access to the internet.
So this is a case study that really showed, on the one hand, how quite well-intentioned efforts on the part of the state to not only include diverse groups through random selection, but even to direct consultations at a particular marginalized group can be of very limited effectiveness when imposed from the top down.